How is it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here and haven't been to the channel before, I talk about forestry, talk about how forestry and deer hunting work together, and land management, and try and educate people on the things to watch for in the forestry industry. I've been in the industry for over 10 years now. My dad's been in the industry for 40 years. My grandpa has been in it his entire life. So it's something that we've done for a long time. And yeah, see a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings in the industry. And this channel here is simply just to educate people, like I said, and hopefully provide some value to you guys. So if you consider hitting the like button and hitting that sub, that would help out the channel a lot. And let's jump into today's video. So a while back I did make a video on the steps to sell your timber, but I wanted to give a much more detailed breakdown that was very much a high picture look, just very basic of what it looks like to sell your timber. I want to look at much more in depth and actually break everything down. So this is going to be a part one of a 5-part series. So we're going to be diving deep into each of these 5 different steps that it takes to sell your trees. Step 1 is to simply actually go walk through your woods. You'd be amazed at how many people don't even take the time to go walk through their woods before they get somebody out to look at it. A lot of people don't have any idea what type of trees they have, how much, the size that they have. They just expect for the timber buyer to come in and know what's best for their property and to put a good offer in. And sadly, that's not nearly always the case. You need to do your own homework in this and make sure that the forester or the timber buyer is actually doing to the property what you want done. So to do this, I would recommend simply just doing a walkthrough of your property. Just get an idea of what you want to do with it. I think this is the biggest thing, is you need to have a goal in mind going into this process. So you can look at a few different things. Are you looking to try and get the most value or the most money out of your timber as possible? If that's the case, it's going to be you're going to want to go one route, versus if you have a very mature wood lot and you're wanting to manage this over, the next 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to have a completely different approach. And you need to know what you actually want to be doing with your property before you just get somebody out and taking a look at it. So once you've kind of decided the route that you want to take with your timber, that's when you start to look and see what you actually have. So if you have mature trees, and by mature, I'm talking large diameter trees. So all these measurements that I'm talking about are going to be chest high. A lot of foresters will call that DBH, diameter breast height. And you'll want to just basically measure from just the diameter of the tree from one side to the other. It's a little tricky with a tree being round, but you can get pretty close. And when I'm talking mature trees, I'm talking 20 inches, 22 inches, 25 inches, 30 inches plus. This is what I would call mature timber. Even down to, 16 to 18 inches. But once you start getting below 16 inches chest high, you're talking about, there's still timber there that would have value, but you're going to be taking a different approach than if you have a larger diameter standard timber. So if you're walking through and you're measuring a lot of 16, 18 inches, that type, that size, and smaller, for one, you may want to consider not cutting your woods out. Maybe it's not ready yet. I realize, your goal may be different. If your property is intended for, if you're, say, bought this property and you're wanting to hunt it, and it was less about, the timber, you're basically just trying to recoup some of the cost of the property, through cutting the timber out. It's a very different scenario, and you may want to look at harvesting it a little bit harder than you would if you're trying to manage a wood lot. So most companies are willing to buy down to 18 inches point of cut. Now, point of cut is something that you need to understand what is. Point of cut is just that. It's actually where they cut the tree down. So what most people fail to realize, they hear 18 inches, oh, that's a pretty big tree. So as you're well aware, a tree does not just grow perfectly straight down to the ground. A tree comes down and then towards the bottom tapers out. So at that bottom, that's where the point of cut is. And so you can quickly see that a pretty small tree, chest high, can easily make 18 inches. It doesn't take much of a tree to make 18 inches. So be wary of selling your wood lot under the contract of 18 inches. I've seen people even at 16 inches. And I will warn you, if you're looking to hunt, there won't even be a tree left to put a tree stand in. So just be aware of that. And you may want to consider, if this is a hunting property, to cut out sections of your woods harder strategically to improve the habitat and create bedding versus other areas you're having a little bit more hardwoods. Maybe you're leaving some white oaks for the acorns, things like that. And you can go a little bit about it, more of a selective approach. But all in all, just be careful with point of cut. I still prefer doing a DBH cut, diameter breast height. That's going to give you a much more true, straight through, accurate cutting. The next thing I would recommend doing, and this is going to vary. If you have hundreds of acres, you can't do this, but if you have a handful of acres, even if you do have a larger property, go through and try and break your property up into an acre and roughly count how many trees are in that acre that you feel like would be something you'd be interested in selling, and then begin to average that out throughout the rest of your property and see where that gets you. That way you have a rough idea how many trees you have. And just the more knowledge you have about your property going into this, the better off you're going to be when the timber buyer or forester presents you with all the information. And you can kind of look at both of those things and see how well they match up. And just, if there's big discrepancies there, that's obviously a red flag. But just do your homework is the main thing. So along with this is even just learning your species. So if you don't know the species in your woods, take the time to learn them. It's not difficult. You can look them up on Google. But just figure out, what species you have on your property, and then figure out, roughly, what are going to be the most valuable of those trees. So if they're all hardwoods, say, white oak, red oak, poplar, and walnut, these trees are going to bring, more money than if you have a bunch of pine, aspen, cottonwood, and sycamore. And just be aware of those things going into this. So if you have, say, a bunch of walnut and white oak, the two top species of trees right now, and you get what seems to be kind of a low offer in your mind, just something just feels off, just get somebody else in as well. And I always recommend getting multiple bids on your job, but don't expect to get outrageous prices if you have a bunch of cottonwoods, sycamore, and these lower grade trees that you're just not going to get much out of. And in fact, there's some companies that won't even bother coming out simply because it's not what they specialize in, and for them there's not enough margin in those species. So now that you've done all this, you've walked through your woods, you've gotten a rough idea of the amount of trees in your property, what type of trees you have, the size that you have. The next step is going to be getting somebody out to actually give you a price or consult you on your trees. And so we're going to be diving into that on the next video. I'll create a playlist for all of these videos. That way they're in order for you. You can just go through and watch them if you're watching this later on after they're posted. And again, if you have any questions, if you made it this far through the video, leave a comment, hit that sub button, and it would just tremendously help out the channel grow and reach new people. Maybe I can help educate them as well. So I appreciate your time. Have a good one.